Okay, now I've found my reference. So I have a bunch of images, way more than I need, and that's good for each part of the body. I've separated them into different folders. So I have the head and shell here because I decided to use a lot of tortoise imagery. That seems to work well. A nice trick is you can go to your view options within your window and you can make the size of the icon pretty big so you can look through them without having to open each one. That is helpful. Those are my head and shell references. Then I have my beak references. I just increase all the size of these. I decided the walrus body is a pretty good texture and analog to what I'll be working with. Arms were the tough thing, these huge arms. So I actually think I might use these armadillo arms, but I also have some bones and some sculptures I can use, more gorilla-like. I have a lot of bronze sculptures. For the horns on the head, I'm just going to use this rhinoceros beetle, this nice kind of plated shell. I like the look of that. And for the back legs, I need something really strong, so I was thinking elephant, but they're kind of not as graceful and as armored looking as these rhinoceros legs. So I think those are going to work well. And they're all lit fairly evenly, and they're all going to fit into this vision I have from my sketch. Now, there's not everything there. I don't have quite the fingers yet, maybe. But I found some overall inspirations as well, and these can be helpful. So these are the bones of a giant mammoth. Pretty interesting. That structure is pretty close to the structure I have here. So I might find I need to balance this out with a tail in order to make it make more sense. There's this video game design for a creature. Looks a little cheesy, but definitely kind of gets the silhouette that I'm going for. So I like all the spikes. Maybe that's somewhere this creature could go. And then there's this strange shell and prehistoric creature, which I vaguely remember from looking at dinosaurs as a kid, but that might be an interesting just texture to build everything around. Now, whenever you're finding reference, you often find one or two that are just kind of too good to ignore. So I mark that with green. And this image in particular, I just really like how the musculature is showing between the connection of the head and the arm, and how that kind of believably makes this rounded spine. So I think this is one I'm going to start with and build around. All right, so how do we do this? Well, instead of building with reference directly, I'm actually going to open up my sketch in Photoshop. So it's still open here as a reference in preview, but I'm going to open up my sketch in Photoshop. I'm going to go ahead and flatten it. So merge everything together. And then I'm going to make its image size big enough to print. So I'm going to make this basically 14 inches wide by roughly 11 inches tall by 350 pixels per inch. And so I'm locking the proportions so it matches the proportions of my sketch, doesn't stretch it out, but I'm resampling it so that it's now 350 pixels per inch, which will make it look a little softer, but allows that everything I bring in will now be the right resolution. I'm going to hit Command-0 to fit it all on the screen. And now I am going to build extra space around it, because now this is the print size I want. So I'm going to go to Image Canvas Size, and I'm going to make it 40 inches wide by 30 inches tall, just like we did for the fantasy landscape. The canvas extension color is going to be clear because I'm on a secondary layer here. But I can always simply paint it in white back here. Let's turn that layer on. All right, so now when I hit Command-0, I have all this space. It's at the right resolution, and now I can start bringing in my sources. So I'll start with that one that I'm most excited about, and I'm going to just drag them right from my files, so they're going to come in as smart objects. That's almost actually the right size, so I'm just going to go ahead and place it at that size. I'll move it off to the side, and I'll find the next thing I want to use. I really like this head. So here's another way you can do it. Double click it, open it in preview, and then just use the selection tool in preview. That looks weird. This is the new version of preview. Never mind, let's not do that this time. In the old version, it worked very, very well, just selecting, but this is taking a little bit more processing than Photoshop wants to give up right now. So I'll just bring that image in and I'll cut it out later. Put it off to the side. The head is what I'm interested in there, and the neck especially. Place it by hitting return. I really loved this bird's structure around the eye, so that's the eye I want to use. So I'll bring that in. It's about the right size. The only time you have to worry about the size is if it looks too small for what you want, because then you're going to have to lose resolution by making it bigger. Okay. And there are all these amazing shells. And I actually quite like this one. I like the color underneath. So I'll bring that over. There are so many nice ones. This one's really great. Now that reference is bigger than I need, so I'm going to go ahead and shrink that down. You can also, when you're placing it, you can go ahead and flip it. Just right click and you can say flip horizontal. You can angle it. You can try all kinds of things. So that might be nice for that back shell. Might be kind of molding shells together to get what I want. And with that, I can kind of get started. There's a lot more I'm going to bring in, but first let's just get some of these essentials down. So the first thing I want to do is say File, Save As, and it's going to be a new name. This is no longer my sketch, this is my assignment. So Assignment 2 as a PSD, so it saves all these layers. Now I'm going to start modifying some of these things. So I'll start with the one I know I like. I'm going to right click on it, or control click on it, especially if you're using a stylus, and I'm going to rasterize it. What that allows me to do is select around the parts that I think might be useful, a loose selection, give it a wide berth. And I'm going to say select inverse. Actually, here's a really easy way. Select around what you want. Make sure it's all on the frame. So let me first move it all on the frame. I'm going to put this on top of everything. And actually, if you do it this way, you don't even need to make it a smart object first. Just select around what you want from that layer. So obviously, we don't need all this background. And then just hit Command J to duplicate it. And it will duplicate just that selection on its own layer. And then you can delete the leftovers, right? I'm going to go ahead and turn on, I'm going to use my Move tool, turn on Auto Select Layer. I'm going to move it in here. I'm going to transform it, shrink it down a little, kind of fit in what I want. These are organic structures, but they have a believable skeleton to them. So you can feel free to scale them and warp them, but just be careful that the skeleton is still structural and makes sense. And you can always take your opacity down to kind of map it over. What I'm most interested in with this is mapping the shoulder joints so that that spine and that shoulder connection feels believable. And it's all about the silhouette, right? So obviously the head's not in the right place, but I'm not worried about that right now. Okay, so that's one. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my sketch, I'm going to put it on top of everything, but I'm going to change its mode to multiply mode so that all the whites come through. And I'm going to lower its opacity a little bit, so it's just a reference. And I'll give my background a solid white over my inspiration, so I can just kind of see, yeah, that's working okay. And if I know I don't want this head, I don't think I do. Well, I'm not sure yet. I'll leave it there for now. Okay, next. I know I like this head. So I'm going to select that out, giving it a lot of space. Nothing wrong with keeping the connections around it. But I have to be on the right layer. So now this is a smart layer, but if I hit Command J, it rasterizes now just that selection. And so now I can move this into where I want it. I can get it the right size. I put it on top of everything and start melting it in. Now your sketch shows you your vision, but you're not a slave to it. So you get to change it as you see fit. I'm going to stretch this out, maybe distort it a little bit so it's wider at the back. And I think I could even get away with warping this a little to kind of go with my shape. So I can use that shoulder joint as kind of a muscle. Okay, I'm not going to worry about those color differences yet. Okay. This is what I have so far. Now I know I want this eye and all those kind of scales around it. Select that, duplicate it, Command J, and get rid of what's underneath it. Use the Move tool, put it on top of everything. Whoops. There we go. And try that eye on for size. So a collection of textures. Okay, now the shell. Getting as many of these connections as I can. Duplicating it. Make sure I'm on the right layer. Duplicating it. Deleting the layer underneath because I don't need it. Then moving that layer on top of